What if I told you the only thing standing between you and the life you dream about is not failure, not luck, not even your circumstances, but your own thoughts? What if your biggest enemy doesn't live outside, but inside your mind, whispering doubts, creating fears that don't even exist, and making you fight battles that were never real? Stay with me till the end, because today you're not just going to listen, you're going to break free. And before we begin, I want you to do something powerful. Comment below your location where you are watching this from and subscribe to this channel, because this might be the moment your life starts changing. Overthinking is silent. It doesn't scream. It doesn't warn you. It slowly takes over your peace, your confidence, your decisions, until one day you realize you've been standing still while life kept moving forward. You replay conversations that are already over. You fear outcomes that haven't happened. You question decisions that could have changed your life. And while you are stuck inside your head, someone else is out there taking action, making mistakes, learning, growing, winning. The truth is harsh but necessary. Overthinking doesn't protect you. It paralyzes you. But the moment you learn to quiet that noise, the moment you trust yourself, the moment you take action despite fear, that's when everything begins to change. Overthinking creates problems that don't exist. Your mind is a storyteller, but not always a truthful one. It takes a small doubt and turns it into a storm. It takes a simple situation and paints it with fear, rejection, and failure. You sit there thinking you are preparing yourself for the worst, but in reality, you are creating a world that was never meant to exist. You are fighting shadows, exhausting your energy on things that have no shape, no substance, no reality outside your imagination. And the most dangerous part is that over time, you start believing these illusions. You begin to trust your fears more than your potential. You start seeing danger in opportunities, rejection in silence, failure in every step forward. Your mind convinces you that staying still is safer than moving ahead, that not trying is better than risking. And slowly, without realizing it, you build a cage around yourself with thoughts that were never meant to control you. You tell yourself you are being careful, that you are thinking things through, that you are protecting your heart and your future. But deep down, you are only avoiding growth. Because growth demands uncertainty, and uncertainty makes an overthinking mind uncomfortable. So instead of stepping forward, you stay stuck, analyzing every possibility until the opportunity disappears, until the moment is gone, until someone else takes the step you were too afraid to take. And one day, you look back and realize that the biggest losses in your life were not because you failed, but because you never tried. Not because the world stopped you, but because your thoughts did. And that's when it hits you, that most of the battles you fought were never real. But the time you lost, the chances you missed, and the life you delayed, that was painfully real. Clarity comes from action, not thinking. You keep waiting for clarity as if it is something that will arrive before you begin, as if one day everything will make perfect sense and only then you will feel ready to take the first step. But life doesn't reward those who wait for certainty. It rewards those who move despite confusion. Clarity is not a gift you receive before action. It is a result you earn after taking it. Every successful step you admire today was once taken in doubt. Every person you look up to once stood exactly where you are, unsure, afraid, questioning everything. But they didn't wait for their thoughts to settle. They didn't wait for fear to disappear. They moved forward anyway. And with every step they took, the fog started clearing. The path started revealing itself. And what once felt impossible slowly became achievable. Overthinking tricks you into believing that more thinking will solve the problem. That if you just analyze a little more, plan a little better, prepare a little longer, you will avoid mistakes. But the truth is, thinking can only take you so far. Beyond that point, only action can teach you what you need to learn. Mistakes are not the enemy, stagnation is. So instead of asking yourself, what if it goes wrong? Start asking, what if it goes right? Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, create it by moving. Because the moment you take that first step, no matter how small, you break the cycle of overthinking. You shift from fear to progress, from doubt to discovery, and from standing still to moving toward a life that only action can unlock. Fear grows when you feed it. Fear is not as powerful as you think it is. It doesn't grow on its own. It feeds on your attention, your focus, your constant thinking. Every time you replay a fear in your mind, every time you imagine the worst outcome, every time you hesitate instead of acting, you are feeding that fear, making it stronger, louder, and harder to ignore. At first, it starts as a whisper, a small voice telling you to be careful, to think twice, to stay safe. But the more you listen to it, the more it grows. That whisper turns into a voice. That voice turns into a command. And before you know it, fear is no longer something you feel, it becomes something that controls you. It dictates your decisions, limits your actions, and shapes your life in ways you never intended. But what you don't realize is that fear has no power without your participation. It cannot stop you unless you let it. It cannot control you unless you obey it. The moment you stop feeding it, the moment you choose action over hesitation, something incredible happens. Fear starts losing its grip. It begins to fade, not because it disappeared, but because you stopped giving it the energy it needed to survive, and that's the turning point. That's where you realize that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move despite it. It is choosing to act even when your mind is screaming with doubt. Because every time you take action, you are not just moving forward in life. You are weakening fear and strengthening yourself in ways overthinking never could. You don't need control over everything. You have been taught to believe that control equals safety. That if you can just predict everything, plan everything, and prepare for every possible outcome, you will avoid pain, failure, and disappointment. But life doesn't work that way. No matter how much you think, no matter how much you plan, there will always be things beyond your control, and trying to control them only drains your peace. Overthinking is often just an illusion of control. It makes you feel like you are doing something productive, like you are solving problems before they happen, but in reality, you are only exhausting yourself mentally. You are trying to control outcomes that haven't even unfolded yet, carrying the weight of possibilities that may never exist, and losing your present moment in the process. The truth is, you don't need to have everything figured out to move forward. You don't need guarantees to take a step. Life is not meant to be lived with certainty. It is meant to be experienced with courage. When you accept that not everything will go according to your plan, you release a burden you didn't even realize you were carrying. And in that release, there is freedom. Freedom to try, to fail, to learn, to grow without the constant pressure of perfection. Freedom to trust that even if things don't go your way, you will find a way through. Because the moment you stop trying to control everything, you stop overthinking, and you start living with a sense of peace that no amount of planning could ever give you. Winning begins the moment you trust yourself. At the heart of overthinking lies a silent doubt, a quiet voice that keeps asking, what if you're not good enough? What if you make the wrong decision? What if you fail? And instead of challenging that voice, you start believing it. You begin to question yourself, your abilities, your worth, until even the simplest decisions feel overwhelming. You look for validation everywhere else. You seek approval, reassurance, confirmation from others because you no longer trust your own judgment. And the more you rely on others, the more disconnected you become from yourself. You forget that the answers you are searching for have always been within you, buried under layers of doubt created by overthinking. But the moment you decide to trust yourself, everything changes. Not because you suddenly have all the answers, but because you no longer need them to move forward. You start making decisions with confidence, not because you are certain of the outcome, but because you are certain of your ability to handle whatever comes your way. And that is where winning truly begins. Not in perfect decisions, not in guaranteed outcomes, but in the courage to believe in yourself despite uncertainty. Because when you trust yourself, you stop hesitating, you stop overthinking, and you start living a life driven by action, growth, and a quiet, unshakable confidence that no external validation could ever replace in the end. And when you finally pause and look back, you will realize that most of your suffering was never created by life itself, but by the endless conversations you had with your own thoughts. You overanalyzed moments that didn't need answers. You questioned decisions that only needed courage, and you delayed opportunities that only required a single step forward. Overthinking made everything feel heavier than it was, louder than it needed to be, and scarier than it ever truly became. But the shift begins the moment you choose presence over pressure, action over assumption, and trust over doubt. You stop trying to predict every outcome and start living through experience instead. And in that shift, something powerful awakens inside you. You stop being a prisoner of your thoughts and start becoming the creator of your direction. That is where life begins to open up. Not because everything becomes easy, but because you finally stop standing in your own way.